Are you a believer in good? Do you love it when the good guy wins in the end? Then Charity Matters is just the place for you, where modern day heroes overcome incredible obstacles to save the day with their amazing work. Welcome to Season 5 of the Charity Matters podcast. I'm Heidi Johnson, nonprofit founder, lifelong helper, and your host. I've been interviewing the helpers for over a decade with my blog, and so excited to finally be sharing these inspiring conversations on our podcast. Join me as we learn the challenges and stories of innovators, entrepreneurs, and modern day heroes who set out to solve the problems of humanity. Most of us have dreams to make a difference, but when you wake up and decide to take on the war on poverty, that's a big dream. And today's guest is no stranger to that dream. Join us and meet Kurt Candler, the founder of 410 Bridge, and hear his incredible journey and what he's doing to truly change the worldview, and the war on poverty. You don't want to miss it. We are so excited to have Kurt Candler today of 410 Bridge to share his incredible journey and service and the amazing work they're doing all over the globe. So welcome, Kurt. Thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Really excited.
We're really excited too. So before we just start out, let's just dive right in and find out. Tell us quickly what 410 Bridge does, because you guys do a lot.
Well, we do a lot. Kind of live in a very complicated world. I think what we do is really driven by really why we exist first. I think that's probably a place
Sure.
to start. The way that we say it is that, we exist because we believe we have to redefine this war on poverty. We have to redefine not only the war on poverty, but what it really means to win it, what it means for the people living in extreme poverty. And we have to redefine, how we fight this battle together. That's kind of our why statement. What we do is we do holistic community development in rural communities in the developing world. We're in 4 countries today. We're in Kenya and Uganda, Haiti, and Guatemala. And essentially what we do is we adopt and walk alongside an entire community, an entire rural community of anywhere from, 1,000 to 10,000 people. And we are a mile deep and an inch wide. We walk with them over a number of years, helping them with all areas of need, and ultimately getting them to a place where they can graduate from a relationship or partnership with 410 Bridge, and they can continue their journey of development long after we leave. So we are a holistic, all areas of need community development organization, and that's what we do.
It's fantastic. So I always love to kind of find out the starting point of people, because people just don't wake up and start a nonprofit. There's a journey and a path that leads us down this road of service and helping people, especially taking on something like global poverty. And hunger. That's a big one, right? So you just don't wake up and say, I'm gonna solve world hunger and I'm gonna end poverty. You just don't wake up and take that on. So talk to me about kind of your journey, and really, did you have early roots? Did you grow up in a household that was really philanthropic? Kind of what were your early, moments of charity and philanthropy?
I'll try to be as brief on that as possible, because I think I could go on for hours. But I didn't really grow up in a household that was, I would say, overly philanthropic or overly generous. But we were generous. We were generous with our time, and I would say, though, I really didn't even really. It wasn't really something on my radar until really my early 40s, probably.
Interesting.
Story is that, I'm a business guy. I come from the marketplace. I've always been pretty entrepreneurial in my career. And I think that's just what I tell people is just a really nice way of saying that I realized early on in my career that I wasn't going to make a very good employee. And so I wanted to do my own thing. And so I did that for my entire career to this point. And then right after 9/11, the business that I had at the time failed. And that was what I lay out in the book, kind of our dark times,
right.
Very difficult times for our family. And, you can read about that, but it was our dark times. And what happened in those times was that our kids were going to a small private school here in Atlanta, just at that time, and we were presented with this opportunity in Uganda. The kids in the school were sending shoeboxes full of toys or school supplies or whatever. Anyway, a family went over there to take these school boxes over to Uganda. They came back, and I found them in my house with dessert and coffee and looking at pictures of their trip. And I came across a photo of a school building that was made out of mud and sticks and cow dung and dirt floors, and kids sat on rocks, and there was no teachers. And I just was fascinated by this idea that they had to repack the walls of this school building every time it rained.
Wow.
And so it captured me. It captured my heart. And I felt like, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over there and I'm going to go build them a brick building. Because that's really not all that hard to do. I didn't really understand why don't they just do that, right?
And what year was this? This was like 2001, like right after?
Probably 2004-ish.
Okay.
And so anyway, make a long story really short, is that we went over there. My family, my 3 kids at the time were, I think 10, 11, and 12, something like that. My wife and I and a buddy of mine went over there to build this brick building, school block. And we did that. And after about 2 days, I was sitting with my wife one night and I'm saying, honey, what we're doing here is of no moment. I mean, I thought what we were going to do is we were coming over here to make a generational impact. We had raised enough money for a school building. We'd raised enough money for a water project, textbooks, and all of that. And it really just didn't matter in my view. It wasn't solving a problem that I thought I was going to be solving. And in hindsight, 16, 17, 18 years now, whatever it is, we made every mistake in the book. And
because that's part of the entrepreneurial journey, right? I mean, everyone who starts a business, whether it's a nonprofit or not, you are an entrepreneur, and everyone I've ever interviewed, and there's hundreds of people, no one had a path. They all thought they were going to do one thing or help one person or do one small thing. And here you are 18 years later in 4 countries. And so you're not alone.
I get it. And it's all part of the learning experience. And so we built that brick building, and it was great. And it was all fine and good, but came back and I just was captured by the real problems that contributed to extreme poverty. It's my first exposure to extreme poverty. And I had more questions certainly than answers, but I came back and became a bit of a student, just read a lot about it. And I found very early on that there was a lot written about the problem and why it existed. Everybody has a lot of different opinions, but I really felt compelled that I thought I had an idea on how to go execute on that, which is really crazy because it is a big, complicated problem.
Huge problem.
And I felt like, what if we could focus on a place and really go deep into that place for an extended period of time? Could we move the needle in that place? Could we really begin to solve this poverty problem for that place?
And meanwhile, had you been gathering community and friends to build, because you say we, and it always starts out with a person or two, an idea, a small problem that people are going to solve. And then all of a sudden, that person, being you, lights a fire on a lot of people, and the fire grows and builds and builds. So at this point, when you're just trying to process it, have you already started building community about people who are going to help you with this?
No, not really.
Okay.
I had one guy that he and I became quick friends. He had an audience and was prepared to get the word out for something different, trying to address this poverty issue. He had no idea how to go do that, like I felt like I did. But he had a voice and a stage and an audience, and he and I kind of got together, and he was going to be the voice of what we were trying to do. Really, we started in Kenya. And so that's how, when I say we, I see it more as, it's just, I never feel comfortable just saying I. So it's more
and
really solve this poverty problem. Yeah.
And I've never met a nonprofit founder once that says, oh, well, I did this and I did that. Never once. And most of us like to talk about our work and not ourselves. But the reason we have this conversation is because people listening think, where do I start? How did they build this international huge organization? Well, they need to hear these conversations because all of us have these crazy journeys that led us places we didn't expect. And we're all thrown into the deep end of a pool and we figured it out. And not one person said, I'm just going to tiptoe in. Someone's drowning and someone's hungry and someone needs you and you dive in to save them. I mean, that's just kind of the story of the nonprofit founder. That's kind of the journey that we go on. We don't realize it. When we look back, it's a lot more fun to talk about it. But at the time, sometimes it's a little overwhelming. So talk to me about some of those early challenges. I mean, you're taking on a huge problem and an international problem.
Yeah, it's an international problem. There's culture matters. All the complexities of, working internationally. Again, we started in Kenya. So we were very focused on 3 communities at the very beginning. 2 of those communities ultimately graduated. One of them did not. It was, trying to find, the challenges were like incredible, but I think the base of our organization I understood that we were going to rise and fall on solid leadership. And so we needed leadership inside our communities, of Kenyans in the community, leading the community toward this self-development objective that we were undertaking.
Right.
And because we were holistic, it's all areas of need. It's water and it's education and it's health and it's economic empowerment. There's spiritual aspects to what we do that are super fundamentally important. And so we had to undertake all of that. And, my philosophy has always been, in times of difficulty, confusion, chaos, disagreement, just do the next right thing.
I love that.
Simplify it to doing the next right thing. It doesn't mean just do something. It means what the next right thing is. It could be a big thing. It could be a small thing. More often than not, it's a really small thing, but take that next step. Because it's small incremental steps toward a goal that get you there. It's not one giant step all the time. And so that's what we did. We were trying to solve one little problem after another, and it started with leadership and then staff over there. I'm a firm believer in 100% indigenous staff. We want Kenyans helping Kenyans, Guatemalans helping Guatemalans. They don't need another American over there. In our context, they don't. And so that's how it began. And I think, though, you ask about the challenges. I think the biggest challenge that I learned very early on, was that, we couldn't be successful, and we still can't be successful in the communities where we work without support from the West. But we also can't be successful in that work until we change the paradigm of how the West engages the poor. Because we more often do more harm than good in engaging the global poor. And we had to
We're a little ethnocentric
about the problem, how they define the problem, and how they solve this, and how they present solutions.
And I think to your point, I mean, I forgive me for interrupting you, but we are a little ethnocentric, that we come in and think that our way is the only way. And we're not always looking at what's worked for that community. And it doesn't, and if you think about it, whether it's a nonprofit here or a nonprofit there, it's all about community and what works in that community and how to bring that community together around a common goal. We're all doing that no matter what it is or where it is, but you can't go into any community and say, hey, this is what we're doing.
Right.
It's just not how it works.
Right. It doesn't. And, I would say that we may not think over here that they need to do it. They need to do it our way. We just think that they should do it our way. In other words, there's plenty of other ways that they could go do something, and we'll give that kind of lip service that that's really good. That's fine. But really, it's our money, our idea, and therefore it should be our way, is kind of our view. And that certainly was my approach when I went into Uganda. That very first trip was like, well, I'm here to help. And so I'm going to build a school building, and I'm going to put this water project in, and I raise the money. And so we're going to do it on my timetable at my pace when I'm there. And that just was so backwards. It's actually mortified by many of the things we did, but but like you said, that's how you learn. And
that's how you figure it out. Well, so talk to me, because I always say, the term I use is, speaking of water, that the bucket is heavy. When we are starting organizations that serve other people, it's not about how many products did we make and how many pencils did we sell. It's someone's not going to eat tonight. Someone's not going to have water. Someone's not going to have food. So we carry the backs of those that we serve, with us. And sometimes the bucket's heavy. We have our own families, we have our own challenges, we have our own things we're trying to do, and yet we're trying to do all this for other people. And so what fuels you to keep going when that bucket was heavy, especially in the early days? I mean, when you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm taking on global poverty, and I mean, that's a heavy bucket just to be in with.
It is. I mean, I guess it is. I never saw it as a super heavy. And I think that's one of the things that keeps me going all the time. I mean, it's just, I think I'm blessed with a lot of energy and a lot of boldness and a, very direct tone. And I think that there's some things that make, I think, what we do a little bit easier, in that we don't carry the burden of our communities. And let me just make sure I'm not misunderstood here. In the communities where we work in are struggling in extreme poverty. This is
right.
This is like, less than $2 per day per household kind of level.
Right.
So it's really heartbreaking. But there's a difference. There was a book written years ago called When Helping Hurts, and they did a really good job of defining this difference between relief, rehabilitation, and development. Relief happens right after a catastrophic event of some sort, a hurricane, an earthquake, whatever. And people need help. They need food and water, shelter, and it needs it right away, but it needs to go for a short period of time. And it has to have a definitive end. And I think that a lot of Western organizations working with the poor apply relief principles to development work. And so what we do is start with definitions. How do we define poverty? How do we define development? How do you define partnership? And development, we define it as that which people do for themselves. So we're a development organization. We're not a relief organization. We're a development organization. So we are very clear when we come into the community and talk to leaders that, we're really not here to do anything for you, but we are here to do with you. And so your job is to mobilize and unify your community around this development effort that we're going to walk with you in, but you need to pull us. And oftentimes I'll use a rope. I outline the story of the rope in the book where, I throw them a rope and they have one end of the rope and I have the other end of the rope. And I say, this rope indicates and is kind of an object lesson for our partnership. And we pull that rope tight. And if I try to push you with this rope, we're not going to go anywhere. But if you pull us, provided you want to lead and you're a good leader and we want to follow you, we can go a long way together, but you have to pull. Right. So that eliminates a tremendous amount of this emotional burden that we feel that we have to go solve problems for people because they can't solve it themselves. We don't believe that. We don't believe that the poor are a set of problems to be solved. We believe the poor are the solution to their poverty problem. And we've seen that manifest itself successfully so many times. It's amazing.
Well, forgive me for interrupting, but talk to me about that. Talk to me about the impact. And I have a really love-hate relationship with the word impact, because when you're feeding someone or giving them a livelihood or showing them a path to being financially independent, you can't measure that. There's no measurable for changing a life like that. There's no amount of a grant report or return on investment for dollar that can even fathom that, which is why I hate the word. But donors and people listening also know, tell us, what have you done? And I understand that. And there's this dance between the stories of the people that we serve and the numbers and the data and all that. And, we're here to help, and as you're kind of just saying, talking about the solutions that you're creating for people and showing them solutions to help themselves. You're not giving them a fish, you're giving them a pole. And there's the impact on that is extraordinary. So talk to us about some of the things that have come out of this work as far as.
Well, that's a great question. And not to beat that metaphor to death, but, we're actually helping them make their own pole that they can
even
fish.
better.
But I don't even know if that's entirely true. That may be a bit of an exaggeration. But so, when we think about impact, I mean, our ultimate goal with a community is to work ourselves out of a job as quickly as we can. But yet this is a very long-term walk that we walk with a community. I was in a community last week in Kenya that will graduate. It'll be our 13th graduating community. And we've been walking with them for 12 to 13 years. So it's a long time. But we're trying to move communities toward graduation. Well, what does it mean to graduate? The other fundamental, I think, distinctive for 410 is that in order to graduate, we have to reach certain outcomes. And, we love to measure things. I love to measure things. I'm a business guy. I measure everything. But we try to, with the leaders in the community, we outline outcomes that they want to see happen. And before we begin, when are we finished with water? When are we finished with education? When are we finished with economic empowerment? What are the outcomes we're looking for? And I think the difference is that most organizations are process-based, not outcomes-based. By that, I mean, I don't care how many programs we run. I don't care what programs we run. What I want to know is this program that we're running in this community going to achieve the outcome that that the leaders of the community set forth? So if you think about household income, an outcome for us is we want to move people from whatever they're making today, call it sub $2 a day, to $4, $6, $8, $12 per day. So they have choices that they can make about their quality of life. Well, I don't care if we run 50 programs or one program. It doesn't really matter. Most organizations find a program, they run it, they feel like that's making a difference, and they just continue to run that program over and over again without really analyzing whether or not they're achieving the outcome that they were called to go set out and accomplish. And so we are really disciplined on that. And so we set up outcomes, and as we start achieving those outcomes and we get to maybe 80% of the outcomes achieved, we'll start teeing up and introducing the idea of graduation to the leaders. And then probably within a year or two from that, we'll end up graduating, have a huge celebration in the community. In this community that I was in Kenya last week, we'll have a huge celebration at the end of this year with that community, and partners and donors will come, and the whole community will come out, and we'll celebrate not what we did, but we're going to celebrate what the community has done on their own, because we don't measure our success by what we do. We measure our success by what the community does on its own. And when they do that, it is amazing to see people have this aha moment that say, we will never go back to being poor again. Now, by Western standards, they're still very poor. Right. But what we don't look at is where have they come from and where are they going to? We just come in typically and see a problem, solve a problem, and do more harm than we ultimately do good.
And when they graduate, and when you have this graduation ceremony in Kenya, for example, are you then leaving the community? They're now on their own. You've taught your child to walk, to run, and you walk away and say, on to the next place.
The community, typically, they are already, in this case was last week, they've introduced us to a neighboring community of theirs who has seen the impact that's going on in their community, and invite us, which is really an important step. They invite us into relationship with them. We don't just show up and say, hey, we're here to help. We need to be invited in. And so we word of mouth spreads, and people see what's going on in their neighboring communities, and they invite us in to continue the work there. And that's what's happened in Kenya.
Fantastic. So you can't start an organization like this. I mean, you can, but most people start out something small, and all of a sudden the dream grows and it gets bigger and bigger. And as I'm already hearing about 4 countries, graduations, more communities. I mean, what is the big dream for 410? What is the big dream?
Oh, wow. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm always dreaming.
That's part of the
I would say,
diagnosis.
The reality of kind of what we do and what it takes to do what we do, it's very people centric. I don't think that our dream is to continue to add communities until all of a sudden we're in thousands of communities around the world. My dream really is for other organizations working with the poor to think a lot more critically about what they're doing and how they're helping. And if 410 Bridge can be an example of a model that works, it's not the only model, but it's a
Right.
pretty distinctive model. If they would look to that and think critically about what they're doing through the lens of what people do for themselves, that they are not a set of projects to be completed. They are the solution to their poverty problem. If they would think critically about that, the world, I think, would, they'd be more effective, I think, in helping
Right.
eradicate extreme poverty around the world. And we don't have to do it. They could go off and do it. And so my dream is to, scale it through other organizations looking to adopt a better methodology of engaging the poor holistically.
It's so smart. And I think about it. I have these conversations with my husband who is an entrepreneur. And I always talk about, gosh, do we want to roll up for, 501c3s? Do we want to have the Home Depot and get rid of the mom and pop, hardware store and the mom and pop nonprofit that's breast cancer or be this huge, and I think about that. And I love what you're doing because it's the hybrid. You're like, I can ignite the mom and pops to help support this whole idea and still let them be the mom and pop and not be, the Home Depot or the Red Cross of nonprofits, because
most charities don't want to get rolled up. They don't want to. I've seen huge resistance to that. So that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book was maybe other organizations will read it and see, hey, well, we could apply this, or maybe they think a little more critically and have their own aha moment that says, we're probably not doing that in the best way that we should, to put it nicely. And maybe they change how they do what they do as they engage the poor, and they'd be more effective. I'm hoping that's what happens.
I think it's a really fantastic dream. So in 2004, more or less, you started this. You've got to have had a lot of life lessons in almost 20 years of time, learned a few things along the way. So what do you think some of the big life lessons of this journey have been?
The biggest one is a pretty easy one because it's, unfortunately, all my friends and my family are just tired of me talking about it. But but the biggest one is when I was in Uganda, that first trip, I remember saying to myself, looking around, and again, typical American coming in, just dominating the day. I'm a big guy, I speak directly, all of that. We're going to get the school building done. But the question I was asking at that time was, what are the men thinking in this community? Where are they? Why are they sitting on the side of the road doing nothing while the women in the community are doing everything? The kids are walking long distances for water. The women are doing everything in the community. Why are people thinking the way they think? Why do they have this perspective?
Right.
And today, what I would say, 16, 17 years later, whatever it is, I talk about, it's really an issue of worldview, and it all comes back to, you rise and fall on your definitions. And I talked about defining development as that which people do for themselves. Well, if we're going to solve this poverty problem, we better define it well, or at least be aligned in how we define it, because that's, if you're going to solve that problem, you could ultimately solve a different problem that you haven't defined real well. Anyway, so with poverty, we don't define poverty as a material problem. We define it as an issue of worldview, how people think. Right. Because people's worldview, everyone has one, and this word worldview gets often misunderstood. It's filled with religiosity and all that. It's the story that you're telling yourself to be true, the conversation you're having in your head. Right. Your perspective, that drives the choices that you make. And those choices drive the actions that people take. And so what we've learned over this now almost 2 decades is that those choices, their worldview, has more to do with whether or not a people will live in deprivation or thrive than really anything else. And so we are always trying to help people think differently about their quality of life, their perspective on how they think, why they think what they think. And when you can help people shift their worldview from whatever it is today to, in our world, a Christian biblical worldview, they'll do more to solve their poverty problem and continue their journey of development without you than they will with you. And so that's the big life lesson for me. I'm all about this idea of worldview driving choices that we make. And that's global. That's in my family, that's in my community here, that's over there. It's everywhere that happens.
Right.
And so, that's a big life lesson for me.
And do you think you've changed, Kurt?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I have.
You're changing everybody else. Everyone else being changed. I'm
Sure
going to
I
take a
have.
gander that you've changed on this journey.
Yeah.
So how do you think you've changed?
It's interesting. I asked my wife that just recently, and from my perspective, I don't know that I'm all that self-aware of how I've changed over the last 20 years, but I will say that I've become way more patient. And she would say that I've become way more humble. And I think there's nothing that will humble you more than working in extreme poverty environments. I mean, it's a humbling experience. She told me the other day, she said, you are way more purpose driven in your leadership than emotionally driven. And so I think that all sounds pretty good. I guess it's,
well, I would say, I mean, and isn't that what we're here to do? And isn't that when you think about all of us that do this work, we do it for a purpose, and we get up every morning. We don't do it for the money. We don't do it for the fame. Right. We don't do it for most of the world doesn't know who we are. And of course, trying to change that with these conversations. But I think that that's why we do this work every single day. They talk about the purpose-driven life. I forget who the author is, but that's why we do.
Rick Warren.
Yes, Rick Warren. That's why we do this work, right? That's why we do this work. So I know you've written a book, and I know that there are a lot of people listening that want to learn more about your story, that want to buy your book, that want to support, donate, get involved, all those good things. So tell us a little bit about the book, and then tell us about how we can get involved and support you.
Yeah, well, the book just launched in late February, so it's pretty exciting. I never thought I would be an author, but I guess I am. So
congratulations!
I like it. I think I said everything that I was supposed to say. The book is titled "If You Really Want to Help: Redefining the War on Poverty." It's available on Amazon and Apple, and there's an ebook version of it. So you can go to Amazon, type in my name, Kurt Candler, or If You Really Want to Help, and it'll be there. It's currently, one of the number one new releases in multiple categories. So I'm pretty excited.
Congratulations. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so it's crazy. But the book really goes through kind of the origin story, much of what we've talked about together, and the origin story of 410, kind of the dark times of what got me into thinking about this, and then really how we go off and do what we do with a lot of story in it, a lot of story of heroes that I've met.
Right.
Great, amazing people that I get to meet every day. And so I think it's, I think it's as fun as a book on poverty can be. I'd appreciate it if you'd read it.
Well, and tell us where we can donate. We can follow you. We can find you on Instagram, your website, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So, 410bridge.org, 410bridge.org is, the website for our organization. And you can learn more about 410 Bridge, where we work, the kind of work that we do and so forth. You can kind of learn how to sponsor a child on 410 Bridge. That's the greatest entry step for most people. Is there's no better way to stay connected to 410 Bridge and the work we're doing in the community than to kind of walk alongside the life of a child as they kind of are on their journey of development. So you can find out all that information on 410bridge.org. If you really want to help, is on Instagram. I have a LinkedIn page. You can follow me there on LinkedIn under Kurt Candler. And so any of those social medias you can search on and find us, 410 Bridge and Kurt Candler. And we'd be grateful. We'd appreciate the support for sure.
I've loved hearing your journey. I am really excited about the book, and I love that we got a little spoiler alert on it. So I hope everyone listening is going onto Amazon, getting the book, or going to 410bridge.org and checking out the incredible work that you're doing. Kurt, thank you for sharing, for inspiring us, and just making the world a better place. It's really such a pleasure to talk to you.
Well, it's my pleasure. Believe me, it's the pleasure's mine. But I'm grateful, Heidi, for the work that you're doing to help folks like us and organizations that are not terribly large get the word out of what we're trying to do to make a difference, to make the world just a little bit better of a place. And so thank you for what you're doing. Grateful.
Oh, thank you, Kurt. I appreciate that. And everyone, I hope you're out there ordering everything and supporting 410 Bridge. Thanks again, Kurt.
All right, thanks.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Charity Matters podcast. I really enjoyed talking to our guest, Kurt Candler, about what it takes to start a business that truly changes people's lives. I think Kurt's comment about doing the next right thing was so inspiring and true. To learn more about modern day heroes like Kurt, or if you'd like to reach out to us, visit us at charity-matters.com or connect with us on Instagram at Charity Matters. If you enjoyed our conversation, we'd love it if you shared it with your family and friends. And please don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. But more than that, thank you for caring, thank you for believing in goodness, and thank you for being a part of our movement. You are exactly what the world needs more of. And remember, together we can make a difference, one small act of kindness at a time. Charity matters. See you next time.